Hello, I'm Kit, your friendly feminist cat lady spinster, and welcome to the 12th day of Tradmas. The 12 Days of Tradmas is a series looking at people in the trad or traditional movement, and for the 12th day of Tradmas, we are looking at Biblical Femininity Bootcamp. I did a video on her a few months ago. I'll link it above because she was so kind as to give examples of submission. And well, today we're going to look a little at that and also some other interesting things that she said. For anyone who doesn't know, BFB is run by a woman named Louise. It's apparently a Titus2 Ministry, so I think she fancies herself a younger Lori Alexander, aka the Transformed Wife. I will link a video I did on the Transformed Wife up here as well. And for her Instagram bio, she's talking about Christian femininity in a feminist world. Let's just have a look at some of the things that she's talking about. Someone asked, what if the husband doesn't want to have kids at all, but you do, and I come to an agreement prior to marriage where he later changed his mind? Louise says, that is sad that someone would not keep their word, but also people can change their mind and that's okay. If it's your husband, you have to follow his lead and that will always be a blessing. Well, it is definitely true that people will change their mind and that's okay, but it's also not okay that in this world, divorce is forbidden. So if one of you really wants kids and you came to an agreement before marriage and the other after marriage says, actually, no kids, you can't get divorced. Regarding going into marriage expecting the other to make you happy, since marriage is a picture of Christ and the church, we wives as an image of the church do partially exist to please our husband as we exist to please God. God will be happy without us, and husbands should also live in that frame of mind, but we are here to make them happy. But it does not go in reverse because God is not here specifically to please us or make us happy. He does many times, but that is not something that he must fulfill. Marriage is a reflection of that. So I agree that you should not go into marriage expecting someone else to make you happy, but I strongly disagree that women are only on earth to please men. In this post, we're talking about birth control. I agree hormonal is not a choice I would choose, but if my husband said it was what he wanted, I would do it and be blessed for obedience to him. He would answer to God for that choice. Maybe by prayer, God would change his mind. I'm referring to Abraham letting Sarah be taken away twice to be another man's wife by saying she was his sister. God did not allow that to come to fruition, but Abe meant it. Sarah obeyed. She was blessed. It's really interesting because in other parts of the trad circles, there's a big backlash against hormonal birth control. So to see Louise being like, not my choice, but it's up to my husband is interesting. It's not the wife's job to point out when her husband is making a blunder, though. The Holy Spirit can do that just fine. She needs to respect him instead. I said this elsewhere on this post, that if my husband said that was his preference, I'd obey him and pray for God to make sure no eggs get fertilized. He can just as easily do that. And that he would change my husband's heart. Every now and then I mention whatever side effects I didn't like and see if he didn't mind us trying something different. Most men are reasonable. They are not idiotic monsters who don't care if their wife has health problems. What will decrease their compassion instantly is a naggy wife or one that acts more spiritual than them. Actually, I had a friend in this exact situation and she went with her husband's choice and was kind and sweet to him, didn't nag or complain, and prayed and God opened his eyes to how it was not a good choice. It's purposely short-sighted to act like every single husband would never change his mind on it. This is just so weird to me on two levels. One is letting someone else decide what you put in your body, and the second is you let them decide what you use to prevent pregnancy, and you can't complain about any side effects. You can mention them, but you have to be careful how you mention them because if you're a nag, well, your husband won't like that and you wouldn't be respecting him. Newsflash, you won't have 100 kids if you leave it up to God. You probably won't even have 10. The average family size for the 1800s is said to be 7 to 8 children per woman. By 1900, it was only 3.5. God is completely sovereign, but just consider how many hurdles have to be overcome to have a large family. Your age of getting married, your health, your husband's health, pregnancy loss, children pass away, natural infertility after having a baby, bad timing, a lull in marital relations as life ebbs and flows through different seasons. It's actually hard to get an enormous family. Why not trust God that his timing is best? But she's talking to women because she says she's not equipped to teach men, and the women don't really have a say, apparently, in these things, so why is she telling them this? And also, is trad going quiverful? Because between this and the traditional mother, I'm just starting to wonder. When a marriage is sour, submission is not the problem. Many things may be contributors, but submission isn't it. It is commonly thought that submission, or too much submission, causes women to be mistreated, but the truth is that sin is the culprit. A husband and wife will sin against each other no matter what. Submission doesn't make that worse, although at times it can make it stand out more. There are a few rare exceptions to submission when a husband has a sinful request and God must be honored above that, but that is in particular cases. Otherwise, there isn't too much submission, only these infrequent times of discerning that submitting to God and submitting to your husband aren't the same thing at the moment, but they usually are. So I guess someone asked, where is the line of what not to submit to? And Louise posted, imagine your landlord came to the door because the rent was late because your husband just didn't send it, and your husband lies that he put it in the mail this morning, and then promptly goes to put it in the mail as soon as the landlord leaves. And it is not your job as wife to expose that sin in the name of, I can't submit to sin. So Louise adds, do not submit to abuse of your children or sexual immorality or outright satanic things. The list of sins in your husband you will have to ignore as a wife is a lot longer than the ones you will probably ever be able to claim, I can't submit to that because I must submit higher to God, unless you married a sinless husband. Well, at least she draws the line at child abuse. If my husband is doing something wrong or saying things he shouldn't, how do I correct him without seeming overbearing or I'm above him or a know-it-all? And Louise says, it's not a wife's place to correct. Ideally, he has men in his life that he spends enough time with that would notice things. There are times, though, that with prayer and meekness you can bring things up. Make sure you are humble, non-accusing, and just say it once and listen to his reply, then drop it without arguing. This is really hard to do and should be rare. The Holy Spirit is always better at it than I am. So many times I have prayed about something and not long later my husband has said he felt convicted about that very thing. So in short, women, your role is to do nothing. Men don't care if you're a boss babe, they care if you're submissive and respectful. And Louise says, progressions of every boss babe I know. Decent relationship, usually married, has kids and wants to stay home, becomes a boss babe, becomes a single mom. Where are all the good men? So all the boss babes she knew got married, had kids, and wanted to stay at home, and then they became a boss babe and then got divorced? But if they wanted to stay at home, why would they become a boss babe? I'm assuming a boss babe is someone who's like a CEO. If you're a CEO, you have a better control of your own schedule than if, say, you're a retail worker who's at the mercy of your manager for your job at all. But this doesn't make any sense to me. And also, why do these people always know more boss babes than I do? All right, so now we're getting to a heated discussion that happened on Louise's Instagram a couple months ago, and I'm going to put a trigger warning here because of mentions of sexual assault and also sexual assault in marriage. Louise responded to someone asking about marital assault, and she says, assault is assault. In marriage, you give your consent to have sex and give it as a duty to your spouse, both spouses, not just the wife, on the altar once for life. There is no such thing as needing to get consent for each encounter. A wife should rarely say she doesn't want to have sex with husband and vice versa, and most men will recognize legitimate reasons like illness, etc. The problem usually comes because women like to give too many illegitimate reasons and have an unsubmissive heart in general. So as you can probably imagine, this got a lot of attention. I'm not blaming women. People just perceive it as such because I do not speak to men and what their responsibility is. That doesn't mean there isn't any weight on the man's shoulders. It just means it's not my business to point it out. You're falsely assuming I think there are no legitimate reasons to say no. I said in the post that most women are usually giving poor reasons. PTSD from past trauma is a good reason. Just don't feel like it, not related to trauma is not a biblical reason. There's a difference. I have to admit I was not aware that the Bible gave legitimate and illegitimate reasons for having sex or not having sex. If you hand an alcoholic a bottle of whiskey, is it partially your fault that they fall back into their vice? Men love sex. They need it. They always want it. When you refuse them their needs, what do you expect? A happy marriage? Don't be foolish. Men are not animals, Louise, and no one needs sex. It is nice to have, it's fun to have, but it is not a need. You will not die if you don't have sex. It's really weird because on one hand, they exalt men and say they should be the leader and his wife should be submissive to him. But then on the other hand, they're like, men are weak, they need sex, and they don't get sex. Well, you're forcing them to cheat. It's their vice. They cannot help it. Sure, they are your pipeline to God, but they are weak, fallen men and sinners, and they just can't help themselves. It's good to be thinking about this ahead of time. Here's the truth. Women often don't feel like it, and that's okay and normal. You need to do it anyway. And don't worry, you'll likely get in the mood after you start, and it won't be miserable if you don't choose to be miserable. It actually takes effort not to enjoy. But is sex really that enjoyable when your partner is unenthusiastic about it? Right. Your example of being conscientious to say, I'm really feeling unwell, can we plan for sometime soon, is a great way to phrase it, and the vast majority of couples would not mind this type of interaction. The key is the planning for soon part because just, no, I'm not feeling well often goes on for far too long. Louise, why are you policing the sex lives of people? So a man came on this post and asked, question, how do you explain hormonal imbalance or non-functional hormones? My wife was diagnosed with cervical cancer 23 years ago. By the time they got to it, a complete hysterectomy was necessary to save her life. As a result, her hormones and desire for sex were killed. We tried tons of treatments to no avail. Now, my drive remained strong and we had to find a solution. The answer was simple and one that the world, for the most part, ignores. Prayer. I love and respect my wife and would never force sex on her in any way, shape, or form. Since that time, we have lived pretty much sexless, but still love each other in the true sense of the word. Our obligation to one another far exceeds the wants in the bedroom. Neither of us is being selfish. We give to each other in many other ways. Silly me, in my innocence, I thought, wow, this is a great response. I mean, you're denying the flesh, which is what I gather Christ wants you to do, and you're being, respectful, and yeah, I thought this was like a great Christian response. I was wrong. Your wife should have sex with you even if she doesn't feel like it, because, newsflash, most women don't feel like it most of the time. She's not that special. I'm sorry you've been through the hardship of cancer, though. I'm not being unsympathetic toward that, just saying that you don't need to accept a sexless life. That is wrong. My mind is blown. He said that they turned to prayer to get the answer, and they got the answer, and it was fine. And Louise is like, no, you should not have to forego sex. Is sex not a worldly thing that we should strive to tame our lustful urges? Oh man, okay. And then someone else who had quite a lengthy discussion with this man said, I would just let you have sex with strippers at that point. Can't you throw in a blowjob? And I say this as someone who has an illness that leaves me bedridden when it flares. It's a bit selfish of her at this point to torture you. You seem like a good guy who doesn't deserve to be sexless just because she had a hysterectomy. Oh my god. It is so weird because for all the talk about how great submission is to the right man and how the right man will treat you right and you won't regret it and whatever, this seems like the proper response to me if the wife isn't in the mood, because without hormones it's hard to be in the mood for sex, then you just don't have sex. And it seems to blow their mind as well that he could love his wife enough that he does not actually want to go outside his marriage to have sex with a stranger. Okay, fine. It blew that one person's mind that he did not want to do that. Louise, I think, said that was a sin to go outside the marriage. But so with everything that Louise has said, I feel like she wants to martyr herself on the altar of submission. I have no idea, but it's incredibly weird and unhealthy. Granted, giving control of your life to someone else is going to be unhealthy no matter how you frame it or phrase it, but the idea that men and women can compromise and work together just kind of seems to be like a foreign idea to the people in the trad movement. If a woman is not submitting, they must be competing with the man. And that's just, I've been in several relationships and that's never how it's worked. And also, if you love someone, you naturally want them to be happy. So you would not be competing with them for, I don't even know what you would compete for in a relationship. The better piece of chicken, the best side of the bed. I have no idea. But it's really weird to me that they see everything as some sort of competition if someone is not submitting. It has been a little educational, wandering through the trad circles. And for my final evaluation, Louise is most definitely religious first, and trad is kind of there. I think that there are some churches that would look at her and go, whoa, lady, you are taking things way too far. Anyway, that is it for the 12 Days of Tradmas. I hope you enjoyed this video and this series as much as possible considering the content. We will return to our regular scheduling in the new year. And on that note, I hope you have a great and safe new year, and I will see you in 2022. Bye!